Hello there, this is Honest Klaud. I'm Eric Elliott. I'm here with my guest, Rayven. Rayven, why don't you speak to the people about yourself?
Oh my goodness. Hi, I'm Raven. I don't know about me. What about me? I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a OG trilogy fan because I'm old. And I'm on Broaxium on shooting the voodoo. I've been off for a little while, just doing some stuff outside of work, but for work. But I'm gonna be back soon. But I'm on there. I don't know. I'm really boring. I just realized.
Or maybe you can still have, a nice conversation.
Absolutely, I'll do my
Relate
best. I'll do
yourself
my
for.
best.
Uh, I was just thinking to myself, I'm just like, wait, is this? Yeah, this is the first lady I'm gonna have on my channel. I just like
Wow.
it's been a real a lot of Franks
I
in
would
the lineup
imagine. I would imagine.
because the first 5 episodes I'm just speaking to my dad,
Hmm.
and then I have other guests. I have had a non-binary guest. I had Kind of Holiday, who I'm real cool with. But yeah, everyone else has been cis dudes. Um, it wasn't until I had Chris Ryan that I had
Hmm.
someone else that's black that's not my dad.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to be a part of that club and yet to be the first cis female, I guess.
Yeah. Before we hop into any Star Wars subjects, I would like to say, congratulations to SAG-AFTRA and WGA for both coming out of this um, to get something of what they're deserved. I still
Absolutely.
don't think it's enough, but that's a
No.
conversation for another time. And um, tell your local representative to call for a ceasefire.
Yes.
Um, but I've been following Boraxium for a little bit, and the way I got introduced to it was I watched Blue Milk's AI raids.
Hmm.
Um, I saw Dan continuously say, "But I'm just a boy," as adult Anakin, and
Hmm.
I became acquainted with your character Sporkie,
Sporky bomb.
who is uh, a clone with a lot of personal issues.
A lot of personal issues. Absolutely. I feel like it's a conflicted character.
We also have you yelling "my parents" as Empress Nest when Boba Fett seemingly sets ablaze your family while also molesting them and eating chicken slowly. Um,
Yeah, well, he was eating chicken slowly at all points, though, if I'm not mistaken.
the AI reads go off the rails almost immediately. Like Pete doing the voice of Jabba the Hutt, and he's talking about a
Yep.
droid bundler. There's Imperial with uh, was it sandals, and he slips on them. We have
Hmm.
Chewbacca tell Han, "No shit."
Hmm. Bed sand.
Yeah, bed sand. I think about bed sand like at least once a week. I really do. And
They're so hilarious.
a lot of times that'll be like the only comment I'll leave on a Braxton video. It's just bed sand, and
Bed
just want to
sand.
see Chris Ryan's groan because he has the most entertaining reactions to anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I thought it would be good to start asking guests that I'm not uh, don't talk to that much of to try to gauge what they enjoy as far as Star Wars. So I have a segment where I ask what's your favorite, least favorite, and underrated when it comes to film, TV, comic, and novel type books.
Okay.
So what would you categorize favorite, least favorite, and underrated for Star Wars films?
Favorite is Return of the Jedi. I am a Luke Skywalker girl from start to finish. So
Mhm.
it'll always be Jedi for me. As much as there's been other things, and parts that I've enjoyed, nothing is gonna ever top Jedi for me. My least favorite, I don't know. Probably The Phantom Menace, just for me, but that's probably because of the age I was at the time that the movie came out, and it's got a little kid in it, and kids just are not my thing. So I think I enjoyed it more, in the next two movies than I did Phantom Menace, just because I don't know, for some reason that one just, I mean, do I hate it? No, but like I don't hate anything Star Wars, honestly. There's stuff I don't like that, didn't go for me the right way, but I don't hate anything.
That's why I say least favorite, because
Yeah,
I think just that word choice of not saying worst,
exactly.
it's more inviting. It's less confrontational. Uh,
Agreed. Agreed.
because someone could ask you, what's the worst of the original trilogy? And I'm just like, it feels emotionally loaded.
Right, right, right. Exactly. Class anything as my least favorite because I'm like, I don't want anybody to be mad. It's just not my thing.
And what movie would you say is underrated?
I don't think it's underrated, but I'm still gonna say Rogue One because it's just that good. It's just that good that
Hmm.
no matter how much people say it's good, it's still being underrated. It's a great movie.
Return of the Jedi has always been a movie I've liked ever since I was a kid, and it's
Hmm.
stayed pretty consistent as that. Phantom Menace and Rogue One are two movies that I've grown to appreciate more over the years.
Hmm. Hmm.
Rogue One, I was just like, you know, fuck yeah, that's really cool. Um, but I'm at the point now where I enjoy Rogue One more than every original trilogy movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I know for a lot of Star Wars fans, that's very blasphemous to
Not
say.
me.
Um, but when I think about it, I've talked about how the movies that come out at certain times, and depending on who's working on it, they have different ebbs and flows of what they think is like a good thing to put in a movie,
Hmm.
or a different beast of like how they approach it. And
Hmm.
like I've gotten a lot of side stares of me talking about how completely inappropriate the relationship between Han and Leia is in Empire. But everyone's just
Hmm.
like, it's so romantic. I'm just like, it is because there's romantic music with it, and they had "I love you" and "I know," because he corners her when she
Hmm.
says "get off of me," and she even like jukes him off of her, and he's like, "Oh, princess," and just like, yeah, that was definitely a 70s, 80s thing to just put into movies, and we were just like, yeah, that's cool.
Hmm. Hmm.
And but now when I look at movies more critically, and I can't get over that relationship.
Right.
Honestly, like I know people have talked about, they think that Leia was kind of softened for Return of the Jedi, but I think other than Han being jealous of the situation of like Luke wants to smash his sister. Other than that whole debacle, I think it's healthier the relationship in that movie.
I can see where it would look that way. I think it's hard for me because so many of the ways that those relationships and interactions are looked at are completely different from the way that I saw them back then
Yeah.
and the way that I see them now. I mean, I love watching reactions, movie reactions. So I'm watching them all. And every time people get just so excited about Luke and Leia, and then they get so grossed out. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't know how it is to be a young person today, but these people in this movie are what, 19, 20 years old. When I was growing up, a girl might kiss a guy on the cheek, and it wasn't necessarily this big romantic thing. It was things some chicks did with some of their guy friends. Weird. Most of my friends are men, so I'm used to that real dynamic of being able to just be platonic with people. So to me, that isn't odd. And I didn't see it as this massive romantic thing because it was like, it didn't come with any declarations of love and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure he was interested, but he's, you know, a young man and she's amazing. So, it's understandable that it initially he might have thought, but once again, they didn't know they were siblings. They didn't know they were siblings.
Are
They
you sure about
didn't
that?
know they were siblings.
Leia says, somehow I've always known.
That's a feeling, though, and that could be very nebulous. You could say, I felt that something was wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean you know what exactly was wrong. It just means that you had a feeling. There was a closeness, a connection that
Mhm.
she knew was there, that she knew was more than normal. I mean, and again, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
that's correct or wrong. I'm just saying that that's part of what's interesting about it being from where I'm from and how that was represented to me as a kid. I
Mhm.
didn't ever see this massive romance between the two of them that
No, no, it's not
grosses
just
so many
romance.
people out. Because
It-
again, the idea of somebody kissing somebody as a way to, like, just to get a dig on somebody else, that's totally, like, I've seen it happen 100 times, and it
like,
doesn't always mean anything. It's hard for me to automatically assume because it happened that
yeah.
that means, because it doesn't. But again, it's different now than it was when I was a kid. I mean, I'm Breakfast Club, you know what I mean? So, and if you watch that movie, it's problematic on so many levels.
Yeah.
But it's exactly how it was
Mhm.
when I was growing up. So to me, it doesn't, I see where it's problematic, but it's also not problematic because I remember those days as they were. And so that's one of the things that I have trouble with the new retellings because it's looking at something that was created 40 something years ago by today's standards. And it's just not
Mhm.
realistic to do that because it wasn't made to today's standards.
I'm not expecting that it should,
Mhm.
but obviously, when a movie has those kind of elements, it can affect how you personally enjoy it, rather than
Yeah, absolutely.
what was probably a good idea at the time
Mhm.
to do. Um,
Right.
but you know, like sometimes I get into it with some of the more toxic Legends fanboys,
Mm,
and sometimes
mm,
I think to
mm.
myself, I'm like, Legends was way more incestuous than canon is,
Real
because
life was a lot more incestuous than people want to
no,
believe.
I'm talking
So,
about with Luke and Leia.
right.
Like, you ever heard of Splinter of the Mind's Eye, right?
I'm not very well versed, no.
Okay,
So,
that was the name Alan Dean Foster.
mhm,
Okay, Alan Dean Foster, he was tasked by Lucas to write a script treatment, basically,
mhm,
for what if there was going to be a sequel to New Hope, before it was
mhm,
called just Star Wars, because they thought it was going to not do well at the box office. It was like, okay, we'll give them a sequel if this doesn't do well, but it'll be really budgeted.
mhm,
So right off the bat, we can't have Harrison Ford. We're not going to get him back.
mhm,
Well, the only recognizable characters that we'll have in this script, which eventually was turned into a novel, would be Luke and Leia,
mhm,
because they weren't big names. Obviously, they had Darth Vader in there still,
mhm,
um, but like they kiss again in that in Legends canon, because it takes place
mhm.
before Empire, because they were able to fit it in to the old canon while the original trilogy was coming out. It was like, oh, this is a success. We're going to do another sequel that's you know better and bigger
Right.
and has Yoda.
Mhm,
But there's an internal monologue from Luke where he describes Leia's voice to be like a sweet fruit.
mhm,
And in the comic run that they did, pretty much immediately after the first movie came out.
Hmm.
Um, like the first, I believe, 7 issues, it just retells the movie,
Hmm.
and then they go off to Han Solo teaming up with the Green Rabbit.
Right.
But yeah, they kiss at least 3 times in the comic series.
But again, that's a different telling. It's another story.
But
It's not the story that they told in the movies. And I
yeah,
don't read all of the extra stuff. So to me,
no,
what I've got is what the movies show me. Reality that everybody doesn't read everything. And what this writer wrote or what George originally came up with and then changed later is what he changed later. I mean, paintings don't start out the way that they end up. It's all a process. And I think, but again, to me, I think it's just finding things to complain about instead of just enjoying the fun of it. It's not real life. They're not
oh, yeah,
actually related. They didn't pork on the thing. I mean,
like I'm not upset by any of this.
no, no,
Uh,
no.
I,
And but people get upset and it just weirds
yeah,
me out because like you guys, it's a movie. Like the spaceships and the lightsabers didn't you
yeah,
know?
like you thought, the movie with Ewoks is like the most serious thing to ever be released in cinema. Like, come on.
Exactly.
It
Exactly.
intentionally has huge elements of camp.
Hmm. It can be
The
fun sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. There's all examples of movies that embrace camp. I mean, like Barbie made $1 billion and embraces a lot of camp.
Hmm.
So it's all about how you balance it
Yep.
with your
And
elements.
everything doesn't have to be Citizen Kane,
No, no, not everything has to be
you know?
Citizen Kane. Not everything has to be The Godfather.
Right, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong, great movies, but everything can't be like that, right? And every artist doesn't tell stories that way, right?
Yeah, yeah. And George talked about that he has always intended children to be brought into this. Uh,
Hmm.
like, I appreciate people's love for these movies, but once again, sometimes it goes overboard, and everyone is shouting at each other on internet. But I'm just like,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
I, I, I'm
Yes.
like, I'm like, okay, sure. I'm not gonna get upset with you if you think
Hmm.
the prequels are better than sequels. Okay,
Right,
whatever. But
right.
don't act like once again like it's Citizen Kane when Jar Jar stepping in crap and he gets
Hmm.
farted on. Like, come on
Hmm. And I think that that's important for people to try to find the balance between appreciating something and taking the time to read into it deeply, feel deeply, and speculate to the moon and back about it. But
now.
also,
Speculate
folks,
responsibly.
it's a movie. Like,
Like Ken Knapsack says, speculate responsibly.
right, exactly, exactly. And also, if you want to be a happier person, just like let everybody tell their version of the story. And if they saw it this way, that's great. And you saw it this way, and that's great. All that does is open your mind to different ways of thinking and ways of looking at things. Doesn't mean you have to change your mind. You can still be like, "No, the way I saw it is how it happened." But there's something to be said for allowing for different people and different viewpoints and different, everything to come into something and make it what they make it for themselves. I mean, it's George Lucas's turn to tell the story. Now it's Dave Filoni's turn to tell the story. Maybe you wouldn't have told it that way, but it's not your turn. He has the speaking stick right now. So you can talk about it and you can tear it apart and everything, but just like people need to calm down. Calm.
Yeah, I agree. You've got to calm down.
They're a
But
terror show.
before we can get to the other medias, what I was going to
Mm,
say before is that Phantom Menace is a movie that, as a kid, my favorite.
mhm.
Couldn't tell me anything about it. I felt like I had to hide my love of Jar Jar as a child.
Mm, yeah.
Um, you know,
I was not one of those people that hated Jar Jar, by the way.
I've come to grips with some possible racial substitution with some of the aliens in that movie and the entire franchise as well, because let's keep it a buck. The Tusken Raiders are Bedouins. Like
Mm,
that's what they are. Have similarities to Native Americans of like not so progressive old West movies.
yeah,
uh,
you're absolutely right.
so you have stuff like that. That I talked about how before that I don't believe that George is hateful in his racism. I think he suffers from a bit of white ignorance,
Yeah.
and he's just kind of sticking with tropes from films that he loves because he studies really old films, story elements, and caricatures.
Hmm.
And,
It
and,
is,
and,
it's a trope. It's a trope, and it's kind of terrible a lot.
yeah, and don't get me started on Jabba's palace.
Well, yeah.
I think that's one more glaring once when it clicks in your head what it's making a parallel to.
Hmm.
That's one of the movies I had the most fun with.
Hmm.
Uh, Sometimes you don't want to overthink to just have fun.
Yeah.
And when I do that, I have a blast. Like I think it's super impressive. Of like, there's like five battles going on in the third act, and they're all
Hmm.
cutting between, but nothing seems too overwhelming for your brain.
Right.
That's a testament in
Hmm.
itself. There's movies that can't even juggle, two set pieces at once.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It was an eye opener because I had grown up, like I said, on the original trilogy, and Obi-Wan to me was the wise old man. And the greatest thing about the prequel trilogy for me was making me love Obi-Wan,
Yeah,
making me actually care. Because, like, so far he was like, great great grandpa. It's like it's cool to sit and talk with him and he'll tell you stuff and he'll teach you stuff because he's really, really wise. But, he's just so far away that you can't comprehend when he was ever where you are or where you're headed. And so this opportunity to, first of all, have an incredible actor like Ewan playing the character, but to get to know this character that you've known the whole time
yeah,
as somebody completely different. And I mean, obviously the same goes for Anakin in that same sense, but to me that's what the greatest thing about, the prequels and certainly obviously the Phantom Menace, because he made me love Obi-Wan and care like beyond, kindly old master.
yeah. I think, well, particularly Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, his role in Phantom Menace isn't as big.
Hmm.
But I think the following two prequels get a lot more enjoyment and story potential just by his presence in the narrative.
Right.
Favorite, least favorite, and underrated when it comes to the television shows, and this includes cartoons and live action.
Okay. Well, I generally, other than the Bad Batch, I really haven't watched much of the animated stuff at all. Um, Animation is just not my thing. I'm not above it. I'm not too cool for it. It's just not my thing. I don't like The Simpsons either. It's not like any
None of the
particular
Simpsons.
thing. No, I mean, I appreciate why people love The Simpsons. Like people who like love it, I'm like, I get it totally. It's just not my thing. I'm not going to purposefully sit down and watch it. If it's on and I can change a channel, I will, but it's not like I think there's something wrong with it. It's really just not my thing. I don't like carrots either. It's the same exact thing. I just don't like it. There's no real reason and no good explanation. But I really did like the Bad Batch. But for me, as a Boba Fett kid from way back, the Mandalorian was a big deal to me. Now I liked Boba Fett as well because it's Boba Fett, obviously. But I mean, I think The Mandalorian is a whole lot of fun. I think there's so many good things about it. And yeah, I mean, there might be some things that are not so good, but overall, I think there's a lot of really good things about it. And I've really enjoyed watching it. Least favorite? I mean, I haven't watched everything. So I have the only ones I have to choose from the ones I watch, and I like those. I don't know. You know what? No, I can't say that. That's not true. Probably the Bad Batch, mostly because I don't get all of the references.
Yeah, there's a lot you would miss out on in references if
Yeah,
you haven't watched a lot of Clone Wars because like it's
exactly.
directly derivative of
Right.
and it's building off of it. They burn the Clone Wars font to make way for Bad Batch in the opening for a reason.
Right. Right. And I mean, it's just it. I mean, I enjoy the Bad Batch. I look forward to watching it. Like, but it's just, it's not. I know that I'm missing things as they go by, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy it because I have no idea what's going on in Ahsoka either. Because I didn't. I mean, I've seen some of the Clone Wars episodes and I've seen some of the Rebels episodes, but I've never sat down and just watched all of it. So I realize again that I have no idea what's going on. I started watching Star Wars with A New Hope, where they drop you in the middle of everything and just assume you know what's going on. And you just kind of have to pick up stuff as you go. And that's how I watch Star Wars now. If I get into a movie, Rogue One or Solo or whatever, it's like I see things I do recognize because there are things I do, I have gone deep into. But I know there's stuff that's flying over my head, and that's the beauty of being on Broaxium. I know those guys will tell me, and I'll find out all these little secrets that I didn't know without having to watch something I just don't want to watch. And you know how it is. If you don't want to watch something, it doesn't matter if it's good or not. You're going to be annoyed with it. And to me, I just prefer not to try to force it.
You talked about how New Hope was the first one you saw. Like, are you like re-release era of watching it? Were you like Laserdisc?
The first time I saw it was on at home because it came out the year I was born. So the first one I actually saw in the theater was Jedi, but I had seen the other two umpteen thousands of times before that because we had HBO and it was on a lot. And it was on, of course, at Christmas and stuff like it is today as well. So, A New Hope was obvious, my very first foray, and then, all of those. But all of those, I saw them for the first time by the time I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
So, those were my first experiences of Star Wars. And to me, A New Hope felt like I was being dropped in the middle of, I was just supposed to know what was going on. And so I've kind of always just felt like that's how you can enjoy Star Wars. You don't have to know everything to enjoy it. If you know everything, it helps because you see all this. I mean, think about, all the scenes on The Mandalorian where, he walks into the bar and there's all these rebel pilots and all these people from the, the animated series. And everybody's just like losing themselves. And I'm going, well, I know Din Djarin. Yeah. I love learning about it from you guys. When I have conversations with you guys in the chat or on Broaxium, it's like, I get to learn about these characters I didn't know. And it's so much more fun to have you guys tell me what they are than to make me sit through. I'm sorry, I went right back around to that, but I just have to say.
Do you ever watch Easter egg breakdowns on YouTube?
Sometimes it depends. It depends on who's breaking it down and whether or not they annoy me in the first 3 seconds or not. I'm old and curmudgeonly. It's like, I'm about to turn 47 years old, honey. If your YouTube video does not entertain me, I will leave. Like, I won't leave a nasty comment or anything. I'll just go to a next video. But it depends on who's breaking it down and why. And sometimes, I mean, I'm a big proponent of seeing as many sides as possible. So I'm the kind of person that will go on to YouTube and watch the Cinema Sins video and then turn around and watch the Cinema Wins video for a movie to get like both versions of I'm trying to find all the best and I'm trying to find all the worst. And so sometimes I'll watch those, but a lot of times I find that they dig deep and I get lost and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then, that's usually when I'm like, okay, cue to the next thing because I'm lost now. It depends on what it is. I just watched a thing on Anakin Skywalker with cinema therapy and it was amazing. It was an amazing breakdown. It was so fun to watch. But there's a lot of other ones I'm sure I haven't seen.
obviously sometimes you feel like left behind in the weeds of like all this information.
I wouldn't call it left behind because I feel like left behind is something that happens to you when you don't mean for it to. Whereas I'm watching y'all parade by and waving, like I don't want to walk that far. I'll walk when I'm ready and then I'll stop when I want to. And I'm happy to let everybody else keep walking. I'm not, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm definitely out of the loop per se
Yeah,
on some of the deeper things, but I think that matters because what I think a lot of people forget is that when you're talking about the bigger media, the movies and the television shows, the vast majority of people who are watching it are people like me. It's people like me who have only seen, well, I mean, I've done more than just see the movies, but they've only seen the movies, or they've only seen the movies and watched part of one series. They have no idea about all of these other things that are so monumental in the background of the story or the background of the characters. And I think that sometimes when we're talking about the stories and the way they should go or shouldn't go, we're forgetting that the people who are buying the tickets to the movie, like the vast majority, don't know any of those things. They don't
yeah.
see some of those flaws that are so glaringly obvious to somebody like you.
I would say that maybe 2% of people that watch the Star Wars movies have read a full Star Wars book.
I
I,
have read full Star Wars books. I will say that.
yeah, I listen to full
But
books,
you're right. You're absolutely
but I've
right.
never read one entirely yet.
I
I'm
have.
trying to get through like 2 right now.
Hmm. Hmm. And it might not be your media, right? Like not everybody likes reading books for
I
whatever reason.
enjoy it, but like one of my big issues is that it takes me a long time to read it,
Hmm.
and I have
Hmm.
ADHD,
Mm,
so that just like compounds it. Like
yeah.
I dreaded having to read a full novel when I was in school. I'm just like, okay, at least I'm getting grade for it. Like,
And
I
I've
would,
always been a reader, but I can't read now because I can't see. So I now am relegated for the most part to audiobooks because I cannot physically sit and read a book. It's just too stressful and I fall asleep within 45 minutes, regardless of whether or not I'm enjoying it, because the strain is just too much.
the digital books work for you. You can like zoom in on text.
That seems like a really good idea until you try to do it. And I read fairly fast as well. So the resizing thing becomes a big issue and it becomes a lot more of a hindrance. And then you just get frustrated and you're like, okay, you know what? Never mind. If I can't
Yeah,
sit down and just open the dang book and look at it. And I also like to read my actual books. I have tons of actual books around here and some of my favorite stories I refuse to audiobook or digital. No, I am reading the hardcover of my Jack London Unabridged. Like I'm not interested in any other version. I want to read the actual words on the page, because I'm old.
I can't say if I find any of these, canon or legends books that I think
Hmm.
are pretty integral to the fandom and the universe at large, and they have like 30-point font. I'll let you know. I'll let you
Thanks, I
know
appreciate
that.
that. It's a giant size. Well, and the thing of it is over the years, I've read quite a few Star Wars books. Not like I never made like an intention to. It was just like I'd be at a store and I'd see a book and it had a character that seemed interesting or story or whatever, or just whatever made me want to buy it. Shadows of the Empire. Um, but I've read them over the years, but never in a way that I would like connect them together. You know what I mean? And like be able to tell the full story of, anybody going down the road because it's just like I never read them in that grouping like that. I'm happy to talk about Dragonlance books that way because I read those in a group, but I did not read my Star Wars books in a group. It was always just kind of here and there because it's something I've always been interested in, but I was never like eat, sleep, and breathe it. I never got to that point because for my age, by the time getting into that stuff could happen, I was a teenager and I'm a girl. So I was lame. I liked the New Kids on the Block.
Well, I feel like I feel like
I'm
having all the
sorry.
information that cuts out like my next questions of like underrated, least favorite, and favorite for comics and books. Is just like
Well, except for Shadows of the Empire, I'm always going to tell people I love Shadows of the Empire. I know it's not canon. I know, but I like it because it was fun.
the novel or the comic.
No, I read the novel and I read it way back, like when it came out, and
You
I
just
just
made me
really
realize
enjoyed it.
on my segment I should include video games. Like I just I didn't include that at all. I just totally
I
forgot
played a
that.
Star Wars video game too, which is really weird because I do not game. I do not play video games. I mean, I did back in Super Mario Brothers day, but I have played the Star Wars Masters of the whatever the heck that martial
Terracotta.
art is called. Thank you, that one. See, that's how much I played it. I can not even remember.
That's the one that Kira name drops.
Yeah, that one I played whenever it came out, a little bit, but I always feel really proud of myself. Like at least I tried to play one. I'm bad at video games, so
Mhm.
I wasn't any good
See,
at Mario Brothers either.
I've not uh, read the comics or the novel when it
Mm,
comes to Shadows of the Empire. I just know I'm probably gonna piss off Star Wars fans by saying that the story of the video game is just kind of mid.
I I I will take your word for it because I honestly don't remember.
I just don't think there's enough going on with it.
Hmm. But
Um,
isn't that what games were back then? I mean, were there any really really good storytelling games that far back? I
um,
mean,
like I'm not expecting a game in the same vein of The Last of Us, but
right,
I just want especially considering how much effort they put into that media blitz. You think that the amount of detail they're able to fit into the books and the novel, they're able to fit a little more into it because the villain, like he's just evil dude with green skin. Like
right.
he looks like a Dragon Ball Z villain. Just like I don't care. I've
You're not
never
wrong.
I've never really been a fan at all of Dash Rendar. I don't dislike him as much as Ken Napsok, but I just never cared about him. I'm just like he's just a dude with a big jaw, big guns, big arms, and big shoulder pads. Like that's like his character.
Right, right. Yeah, I don't think I was particularly attached to any of the characters in the books so much. I
Mhm.
enjoyed the world building for me of the outside, talking about skyhooks and all that other stuff. That was the stuff that I found the most interesting in that book. The story itself was kind of like whatever, but I really enjoyed, just, because when you're watching a Star Wars movie, right, there's not a lot of that everyday stuff that people do. You know what I mean? It's like we all know there's a fresher, but have we ever seen one? And of course, then in The Mandalorian, they had that moment and everybody just kind of laughs, like, okay, finally, there it is. Like it was describing like just the way things looked. And you just don't get that when you're watching a show. You see it, yes.
Yeah,
But when you're in a book, you're forced to listen to them tell you about the color of the curtains or whatever,
yeah.
and you get to take it in and helps you use your own imagination. And I mean, I named my place the Black Sun Sky Tavern, so there's a reason for that. It's in a skyhook.
The setting up of the environment in a
Hmm.
TV show or movie can be between half a second and like 10 seconds, but in a book
Right.
it can go on for 3 pages.
Exactly,
Just
exactly. And
describing
you have
everything
that much
inside.
better experience, right? You feel like you know the place. You can see the place in your mind.
I would say, unless if the writer just has like some really lame metaphors.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Unless if it's
Don't
because
let's
that
not
can be
talk about
distracting.
that because that could be a whole show on its own.
Well, I can bring up one. This writer I don't dislike, but back in the '90s, there was a brief period of time where Bantam was printing and selling the Star Wars books. Like they were
Hmm.
the publisher at the time period, and they are in the Legends canon, but they are almost kind of like their own pocket almost. How they try to connect everything together is like
Sure.
everything comes to like flows. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, well, after enduring the release of the Clone Wars, they made a whole bunch of books that built off of it that interconnect with each other, but they don't make reference to the Bantam books.
Right.
They have no reason to.
Right.
It's a big universe, and you can have like 10,000 corners.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but in this book, uh, the writer on two different occasions describes shadows as being oily, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? What does it mean for a shadow to be oily? I
Well, you know what? Put that on the list, but it's only going to be the number 2 question because the number 1 question is what does it mean when someone's eyes darken? Okay? Because that one's the first one we need to solve about what the hell that means. And then after that, we can go on to oily shadows. What the hell is that?
well,
That
the
sounds
only
like something from Coming to America with the soul glow. Like that's what comes to mind for me.
the only way I can think of the only way I can think of the eyes darkening is like someone gets possessed and like suddenly they have no celera, it's just completely black.
Yeah,
Like
but it's such a stupid saying, and every single author who has ever written a book where there are any semi-humanoid characters has used that sentence, and nobody actually knows what it means. And it's hilarious to me because it happens every time, and it makes no
it's
sense.
it's like asking what flavor is Dr. Pepper. It's like we don't know.
Right? Like it's Dr.
It's a
Pepper. That's
mystery.
what flavor it is. Deal with it.
I'll make sure I avoid using that idiom in my
Please,
writing.
thank
Like
you.
I am working on a Star Wars fan novel. I'm
Hmm.
writing the entire life of Jar Jar Binks.
See, there you go. There you go.
I'm going to avoid it. I'm also going to avoid it in my personal fan script, uh, rewrite of Episode 9, which
Ah, okay.
I keep telling my guests does not have the Emperor in it. I don't think he needs to be in
Poor
there.
Phelps, man. Just, you know, just no, no.
But
There were so many good things and so many just
it's so many questionable decisions with writing, or um, I don't want to sound crass, but there's multiple examples where the movie could have balls, but it doesn't. And the
agreed.
reason I say that is like they have perfect opportunity to have C-3PO's sacrifice like stick,
Mm-hmm.
but he makes the decision to have his memory erased, and then it's like, no, it's fixed.
Yep. There
Like
was
that's
a
the most
lot of
emotional moment in everything C-3PO has ever done. And like it was a sticking point of the trailers. Like I don't get too hung up on trailers of whether that's supposed to be or not. But when I
mhm,
saw them, like, oh, like this, either he's gonna be cut off or he's dead.
mhm.
And you're just like, well, no, he remembers everything. And I'm just like, what does it even matter? I'm like, you're saying this is the last saga movie.
Mhm.
Just let his memory be gone.
Right.
And like, what is it going to affect? He's going to say, "Oh yeah, I remember my friend," in like the last 3 minutes of the movie before the credits roll.
Right.
Uh, and I think they should have killed Chewbacca. I think like I love Chewbacca,
Mhm.
but I think it would still, once again, have staying power. It would really drive in the concept that Rey has a darkness in her and she needs to chill. She has the same predicament as Luke, where he have a violent means to protect people that you love and care about. When
Mhm.
it clearly goes overboard, it goes beyond. I'm just protecting them. But this movie is just like, oh, she's just gonna feel bad for a little bit, and not even 3 minutes later, we're gonna see he's totally fine.
Mhm.
we also didn't need Finn to yell Ray again, but it's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, that was a little overkill too.
Yeah,
But
but
I think that what we have to remember is obviously there are a million things that could have been done better, could have been done differently. It is what it is at this point, but this is where people like you and all of the other creative people, and by the way, I am not including myself in that group, but all of the other creative people have this opportunity, especially in the world we live in today with, being able to post things online and get things out there.
yeah,
Get the opportunity to retell the story in your way and have it go the way you want it to, and have it have the impact or the feel or the darkening eyes that you would like to have. Everybody gets that opportunity, and I think that that's one thing that we have to again remember, that it was their turn to have the speaking stick. The fact that they dropped it on the ground like a bunch of butterfingers is neither here nor there at this point. The best we can do is continue to love the stuff we love. And for those who have that creative ability, be it through art, in drawing or writing or, singing or dancing or cosplay, whatever your particular creative outlet is, you know, he made this galaxy big enough for everybody and their grandmother. So get out there and play in it. And
yeah.
make that character that we all saw on screen for 3 seconds that no one remembers
Well,
into a character that lasts for decades, Boba Fett. Because that's the reality of the world that we live in. Any character can be the biggest character in the world to somebody. So
yeah.
here's your chance. Write your version of the story where that character is the, be all end all, and the next person will do the same thing. The more tellings we have, the more stories we have in this galaxy, the more fulfilled it becomes, and the more we carry on what George started. And to me, that's cool, especially as somebody who just gets to sit and consume it all because I'm completely non-creative.
In my introduction of my script, I mentioned to say that I enjoyed the movie, but I had, my own personal issues with it.
Sure.
I wanted to make sure when I finish it and people read it that this isn't a hate write.
Right.
Get upset about things that actually matter. People not having health care. That's something to get upset
Yep.
about.
Thank you. Thank
People
you.
being forcibly evicted out of their homeland. Like that's something to be upset about.
People dying in general. People are dying every single day,
Yeah,
and people are more upset about a movie than they
yeah.
are about that.
Like this hasn't happened to me, but like someone's like abusive to your family member, like that makes more
Mhm.
sense to be upset about. Like that's
Right.
a genuine danger.
Right.
But oh no, this Jedi has the wrong lightsaber color.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. It's good to have those discussions. Like, why is
Yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
lightsaber color wrong? Why is his form not what it should be because it wasn't this before? Those are all good discussions to have because that's why you become a fan, so that you can nitpick down to the very last thing.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between
Understandable criticism and
Mhm.
absurd amounts of whinging.
Yeah, like you said, to point out things that are not okay that we just thought was okay back in the day. There's nothing wrong with pointing those things out and talking about them and why they're not okay. So those are important discussions to have. But in the end, we have to be able to do it as adults and as kinder people to each. I mean, God, I had to get off Twitter because it's just so much worse than high school. Like, just, we're all here because we enjoy this. Why are you trying to make it miserable for everybody? And I mean, again, you can, nobody's saying you can't discuss stuff or not
Yeah.
like something or whatever, but there's a point when, I mean, y'all, like, find you something else to do for like an hour. Go outside, touch grass, look at the sky, talk to a human in the real world. It's hard for me too, but you got to do it sometimes. you know. But I think it's so important that we encourage people, all people, creative people who want to be a part of this to do their retellings. But we, be kinder to each other. My goodness, you create something and you put it out there for people to see, and then they trash it because they haven't got enough clicks this week. They haven't gotten enough attention this week. Stop, people. You can just cue forward. Tell them it sucks. Just walk away.
Somehow, after every release of whatever new Star Wars television show, it's somehow the worst thing that's ever been released. Like,
Of course.
according to these chuds on YouTube, and
Yep.
half the time, like I say, they drank the Kool-Aid, but half the other half don't believe it really. They just know what will generate the clicks online, and they
It's
are
much easier.
more dangerous, I would argue.
Yeah, I would agree.
And of course, there's also the cultural wars of like, oh no, there's a black person in this movie. I'm just like, shut your dumb ass up.
And I've talked about it before. I mean, ever since I've been, in the fandom, and people have, for some god unknown reason, wanted to listen to me talk about things. But I've always said, there's just this level of need to get under people's skin because we are so tribal. We're the group that hates the Phantom Menace. Okay. And so every single time that we haven't had enough attention, we're going to put out a tweet that says, here's why the Phantom Menace sucks. 24 tweets explaining why. And it's just like, really? Really? That's what you needed to do today? Because somebody out there is going to be sensitive about it. And then you're going to start a big dust up, and you are just in such dire need of patting on the head. And it's like, dear Lord, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. And I feel like there's just so much of that every single day. What's your Star Wars hot take? It's the same hot take it was 4 years ago when you asked. Because you ask every 3 months just to see people get wound up. Show me you can actually be creative without pissing people off.
Or have your thoughts be more nuanced.
Yes.
That's a start.
Mm-hmm. Or present your thoughts in less of an antagonistic way. Instead of saying, this character sucks because I don't think this character works. And here are my reasons why. And then sit down, shut up, and let somebody who disagrees with you calmly explain to you why they think this character doesn't suck. And here are the reasons why. And in the end, you can both still disagree. But man, the stuff that goes on, like there is so much stress and trauma in the world, and people are out here on the internet causing stress and trauma about whether or not they like, Jar Jar Binks. Yeah. And it's just like, you know what? If you didn't like him, he wasn't for you. Keep walking. I didn't like the Ewoks. They're in my favorite Star Wars movie. Well, I mean, seriously, like, I just don't feel the need every day to tell everybody that everything that they do that I don't like.
Yeah.
Like, if you do something I don't like that's bad and like harmful, I'm going to say something, right? But if I don't like your shirt, I don't have to tell you I don't like it. You're going to be just fine without knowing. I love your shirt, but you know what I mean? But, and there's so much of that. And I just don't like people who like to make drama to make drama. This fandom could be so powerful if it would put itself behind things more important than getting the last word against some dude you don't even know on Twitter. This fandom could change the world with what it was taught, but instead it's choosing to be divisive and horrible. And it's just unpleasant, and that's why you don't see me much on, on the social media and in a lot of these things, because it's just become so toxic that I'm like, I just don't want to be around you people. I'm good. I watch the news. That's enough toxic for me.
Yeah. Before to talk about the Ewok thing, I was going to say that two big aspects to this, like why we are where we are now. One, I think the internet is a double-edged sword because you can say something and feel like you're impervious. You can can have a handle, not have it have your name at all, and just say I hate you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Or worse.
if it's under someone that's very popular, then it's probably going to just get lost.
Yep.
But there's still a chance that that person on the side can see it, and it can make them feel rightfully disappointed. And if it's
Mm-hmm.
more aggressive, like doxing, obviously that's a real major issue. But I think another aspect to it is that over the past decade or so, online discourse, when it comes specifically to Hollywood films and television, has become more radicalized on these, superfluous for the most part, cultural war issues,
Mm-hmm.
and compounded by rhetoric of, a certain president, of like that kind
What
of
could you possibly mean?
this certain kind of mentality.
Mm.
Like it just seems to just kind of like stacking up. Before you know it, it's like a mile high.
Mm-hmm.
If we were actually going to avoid all this, like you had to go back, at least 20 years to examine. Wait,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Absolutely. And you absolutely would have to go back way further than the people we're talking about
Yeah,
today. Or at least a good portion of them. Some of us
because
were
on the
around back
bench,
then and we're guilty, but
on the bench, he contemplated suicide
Mhm.
because of online mistreatment of him and his character. And he's been very open about that.
Yeah,
And
and it's so ridiculous. It's so
yeah,
ridiculous. There's no reason for that.
yeah, and like I love that man, and but
Absolutely.
he opened my eyes a lot because I was someone that loved The Last Jedi,
Mhm.
but I felt like after I saw his video, I felt like I didn't, defend Kelly Marie Tran and the character Rose enough. Like I was already a big fan of that character, but I was pretty quiet, and I felt like I should have said it more often, more proud, and but at the same time, like it's awkward because I can't behold myself to try to police, everyone on the internet for their shitty opinions. So
Nope.
it's a weird quandary to be stuck in.
It is. It is. And it's
Yeah,
something that you just have to learn to, you just have to learn to accept that you can only carry so much weight.
exactly.
Don't carry anybody else's baggage. You can't fix those people. Be who you are, speak your piece if you want to. Don't if you don't want to, because people need to stop doing that, requiring I must have an opinion on this. My opinion is none of your damn business if I didn't tell you what my opinion is. You don't own me. I don't owe you. But
Yeah,
be out there, say what you want to say, be who you want to be. But you can't, and again, I'm not saying that we should just sit back and let stuff happen, but
yeah,
you can't fix these people. And all of your support only gets you hate as well. In the long run, what does that do for the kid who's going to be looking up to you? Nothing, because you won't be there for them to look up to. You have to look to what you can do and what you can actually be. And that's what you can be, like he was for you.
yeah. For every 40 upset Star Wars fan that call you a liberal woke idiot or not a real fan, you might get one that will say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, maybe make a point. That's not a good ratio, 40-1.
Right. Doesn't it make it better? I mean, if we want diversity, you want diversity of thought, right? You want people who think differently than you because they're going to have a different point of view. And maybe you'll see things, at least why they see them that way. You won't necessarily agree, but it's better to talk about it than to just stand on either side of the river and scream at each other. Like,
Yeah, all I ask for is that it doesn't become, vitriolic. As long as
agreed.
it doesn't go over there,
Mhm.
maybe we'll be able to hash it out.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting dichotomy. It's like you really don't care about the Ewoks, but like they take up like a third of the movie that you enjoy the
They do.
most.
Well,
Uh,
and they're an important part of the movie. They're
yeah,
just
yeah, like they're integral to the plot.
yeah, but they're kids. I mean, they're for kids. They're for the
Yeah,
kids, little teddy bears. And
yeah,
I even back then, I mean, I was a kid, obviously. Um, even back then, like I got it. This part isn't for me. I had little sisters by then. Like some stuff isn't for me, it's for them. And some
yeah,
stuff is for me. And that's literally how I saw it. And it's still how I see it today. I don't fast forward through the Ewok parts. I watch every single second of them
yeah,
because they're not for me.
yeah.
But the movie is.
And I think that can put things in perspective for someone that's watching us. It's just like,
Hmm.
sometimes elements are not going to work for you, but you focus on what you do like.
Yep.
You keep talking about like those gripes I have with Red Skywalker not having the
Hmm.
balls, but you know what I absolutely love with all my heart? The vision of Han speaking with Ben.
Mm.
I think
Hmm.
that is tremendously well done.
Absolutely.
It's one of the best moments in the sequel trilogy. Wish it was a little longer, but I
Yeah.
understand there was a lot of things to get to. He said to deal with the coal Kijimi blowing up.
Right. Right. I
uh,
think, but that's what I said before with the sequel trilogy. There's a lot of really, really good stuff. There's
yeah,
just a lot of stuff that's not so great either.
really, my only big hangups of the movies is just with Rise of Skywalker. I was like, Force Awakens, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's really good. Um, there's a few things here that are clunky, like R2D2 suddenly waking up at the end. Yeah, that's a little odd. Last Jedi, I really don't have many issues at all.
Nope.
Like I've heard everyone and their mama talk about how much they can't stand this movie. I'm just like, this is just
I love The Last
good.
Jedi. I've never been ashamed of it. I've never
Yeah,
said anything other than that. I love The Last Jedi because I have an open mind.
yeah. It's funny. Like there's like two moments that I'm not huge on, but they're so minor. Like there's in the father chase, there's like a point of view where the camera kind of falls, and I don't like the camera fall. Like
Hmm.
it feels a little too found footagey for me,
Hmm.
and it takes me out a little bit because I'm thinking too much about how the camera fell.
Hmm.
You see how like very small and minute and nothing like big about the plot that is.
But that's what you get from people who watch movies the way that you're watching it with that kind of a critical eye. You know, I don't watch movies like that. If I notice like some sort of a camera trick or cinematography thing, it's something amazing because I'm not going to notice it otherwise. I'm just watching the movie. You know what I mean? Just me not paying attention to that. I am paying attention to their clothes. I am paying attention to their hair, things that I'm really interested in. I'm paying attention to how they did this or how they did that. But like, I don't know anything about lighting. I don't know anything about cameras. So to me, I'm going to miss shots like that or issues like that, but you're going to see them. And that's why it's important that we get that point of view because now maybe I will see it. I doubt it, but I might. But I know what you're saying though. It's those little things that you notice that you're looking for. I notice other little things that are specific to just the kind of things that I notice. You know what I mean? And I think that that's just the difference in how people watch movies. And I do think though that there's a large contingent of people who wouldn't know who the cinematographer was or what he does,
Yeah.
and so sometimes when you watch the breakdowns you're just like, nobody knows what you're talking about, right? Like, I mean,
This is for the film nerds.
right, exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the film nerds because they see all sorts of cool shit that I never saw, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Even with like the issues that I have with, Ember coming back and Ray being part Palpatine, you know what it did lead to? It led to my Zilla Ray theory, which I brought up on the now missing episode of SSW Network when you were one of the guest hosts, because there was a copyright flagging for using Huck's voice in Force Awakens, and brought out my little toys to
It's always
explain
something.
how the Zilla Ray theory works.
So it's so wrong, so wrong.
Uh,
It needs to calm down.
but you know, without that movie and without that plot point, I don't have that, and that's one of my most entertaining things I've ever brought up in my life.
Well, yeah. That's a good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
I
gotta
don't
find the
know.
silver lining.
Yeah, and I think it is important to have those different viewpoints, those different skills, those different things, and to talk about them. But once again, if you think that every single person you come into contact with and every single person you deal with in your life is going to be somebody that agrees with you 100%,
No.
you're really going to be disappointed. And that, and I'm not saying that you are, but the way that people behave about these kinds of things is like that. Like they assume that all the people that they're talking with are going to agree with them 100% on everything. And it's like, it's perfectly okay if Tom Welling is Chris Ryan's Superman and, Christopher Reeve is mine. It's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is. You know what I mean? And to me, that diverse opinion, that diverse telling is so much more valuable than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
I'm glad that Sherlock Holmes has been told over and over and over again, and he's been played by different people and played in different ways because I love the character. Because when I was in 5th grade, I read The Hound of the Baskervilles and I fell in love with Sherlock Holmes. And you know what? I love him when it's Benedict. I love him when it's RDJ. I have just as much fun with both. They're completely different.
Yeah.
But it's no different to me than watching The Last Jedi and Return of the Jedi. Because to me, those two movies couldn't possibly be more
Different.
not like each other. But that's not why I like them. And they don't have to be the same in order for me to like them or in order for me to be moved by them or whatever the case may be. In my particular case, the reason why those are the two movies that move me the most, it is the same reason, but it doesn't have to be that way. And it won't be for everybody,
I mean, both of those movies give like a lot of development to Luke's character.
They do.
Especially Last Jedi, which I argue in one movie he has more changes to him as a person than the entire original trilogy.
Agreed.
And I think it's because we spend so much downtime, we get to pick around in his brain. One example of something that goes over a lot of people's heads, even people that like review movies a lot, is they don't understand why Rey saw the mirror cave.
Mm-hmm.
Luke said that what's down there is most evil, most despicable. He had to stay away from it. It's a mirror. He has to look at himself. He's his worst enemy. He hates himself. But I'm so astonished, like how many people like have not caught on to that. They're just like, oh, that's a cool thing that you snapped, right?
That's an interpretation. It's an interpretation. There are going to be people who see it differently. I've heard a couple of people talk about that scene and what they think it is, and everybody has a very different way of looking at it and how they look at it.
Art frequently has more than one
exactly
idea behind it than just the one.
And that's what makes it good. That's what makes it good, because what you just described is perfectly reasonable. Like, I don't look at that and go, well, that doesn't make any sense. No, it's perfectly reasonable. I don't have that's not a particular moment in the movie that I've given a whole lot of thought to in that regard, because for me, that movie, his character development is much more of an overarching thing. The reality of being what he, or at least from my interpretation, who he is when he walks out of Jedi to who he is in The Last Jedi, and people complain it's not my Luke. Luke would never. The Luke you're talking about was 40 years ago. Do you know who I was 40 years ago? A 7-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Today, I'm a middle-aged woman. And who I am today is so incredibly different from that little girl in so many ways. Now, granted, part of her is still the same. She loves Luke Skywalker and she loves his boots. That hasn't changed. But who I am in a lot of different ways has changed. Why I like Luke Skywalker as my favorite Star Wars character is precisely the reason why I know he would never be my favorite Star Wars character if I met him today. Not who I was when I met him the first time.
Yeah, I would say I'm not even like just me personally. Like I'm not the same person I was when I was 18, and I'm only 26 now. Like
Right.
so much has just changed in those couple of years, where
Mhm.
my outlook has shifted. One of them is that I'm way more socialist now.
But that's part of it, right? Your
Yeah.
life experience helps to make
Yeah.
you who you become later on. And I think that a lot of people, you know, because Luke's their hero, they don't want him to change. They want him to remain what they have built him up to be. And I can completely respect that. I feel the same way about, you know, Superman, and I've been let down over and over again. But the reality is that we all change in any increment of time. Like, who were you before COVID and who are you today? Like, I bet you there's some distinct differences there too, because it's been a life change for the entire world. That, you know what I mean? So it's like there's got to be some give and take, but there also has to be the discussion, right? Who is Rey? Who is she? Is it okay that calling herself Skywalker? Is it okay that she is a Palpatine? Is it okay that, you know, and people are going to have different reasons why it is okay or isn't. And I think those discussions are good. But when they turn into tribal cult like, you know, attack fodder, is I think when people lose the whole point. This is a story. We're all sitting around the same damn campfire, right?
And at the
We're
campfire,
passing
there's
the stick.
cavemen.
Yeah. Right.
And they pick up their giant talking stick.
The talking stick, exactly. You know, and I just think that multiple tellings, multiple opinions, multiple views, even if I completely, utterly, and totally disagree, are still really valuable because it can make Ben Kenobi become somebody I actually give a darn about now. Like, I care. And when he dies in A New Hope now, it hurts my heart in a way it never did back in the day. Because I didn't know that guy. And I didn't have any attachment to him back then. I know who he is now, what he's been through and where he's gone. And yes, my view of Darth Vader is completely different than it was when I was a kid. Because when I was a kid, the movies was all you had. The idea that he was ever human, that he was ever decent, likable, lovable, it was so far from possible, so incredibly far from possible. And now we know differently. And that's because somebody else picked up the stick and told us another story.
Rayven, you know I'm laughing.
Why?
You said likable, lovable, and my brain filled out another word. I'm just like chili bowl haircut.
Well,
That's what he had in episode 1.
he did. He really it, and I mean Jake Lloyd was adorable, and when I said the kids thing, it was not a dig on Jake Lloyd by any stretch of the imagination. It's just 1997 when Phantom Menace came out, right? I was 20 years old. You know, so to me, the idea of going into a Star Wars movie after all those years of not thinking there would ever be another one, and now I got to sit through a story about a kid. I mean, that was like my thought process. So it was just like, that's the reason why it's my least favorite. I still love the movie. I love the pod racing, and I worship at the ground of Liam Neeson. So like, it's all fine. But it was like, that was my thought process going in. I'm like, I have to sit here in a movie about a kid. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, I guess. All right, you know.
Maybe you'll have a different reaction when I forget the title of it, but the new show led by Jude Law.
Jude Law. Oh yeah.
That series with the kids. We're going to see how much you evolved and whether or not
Yeah.
you
Have I grown at all? Probably not. But I will watch it because as much as I don't like Jude Law, I love Jude Law when he's a bad guy. I love Jude Law when he's a good guy. I just don't like him when they try to make him charming because he's not.
I haven't seen him in enough to dispute with the claim or not.
I loved him in the Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie. He plays Vortigern. And yeah, he really oozes unpleasantness in a very lovely way. He does a very, very good job. I mean, I hated him within like 3 seconds of him being on screen.
He's
And I'm not usually that judgmental, but yeah, I hated him like just. I usually give you at least a good 3 minutes before I, completely lose my mind. But he was also lovely as John Watson. He was absolutely hysterical as John Watson. So as long as they just don't try to make him charming, it's fine.
So, okay. Well, is there anything you want to ask me or mention before we slowly start wrapping up?
Well, I mean, I could ask you a lot of things, but none of them would be interesting or insightful because that takes creativity, something I don't have. I would actually just say it's always a thrill to see you in the chat because we always have a good interaction, even though it's short, because I'm usually there and then I'm like doing something across the room. So I'm listening, but I'm not typing anymore.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy just, having these opportunities to interact with people in the fandom because I don't get a lot of this anymore. Because being off social media for the most part and not really, saying anything about anything, it does kind of take you out of the conversation. So it's nice to have these conversations and be able to talk about Luke to somebody who doesn't look at me like I'm crazy. So that's really nice. So I appreciate you inviting me on to babble endlessly.
And you don't like run like a channel yourself or anything like that?
No. If I did, I would probably spend so much time talking about Luke's boots that I would get arrested for something. Boots.
Okay.
The boots from Return of the Jedi. I mean, legitimately in Star Wars, everybody wears great boots, but I have like 20 pairs of boots, and every single time I buy a pair, I just say it's all Luke Skywalker's fault.
According to Chase That Gay Jedi, there's a lot of queer vibes with the outfit and the way Luke enters into the Jabba's palace.
Why not?
I would recommend.
Why not?
I would recommend watching their series called Seems Gay. It's really fun. It's on YouTube.
I mean, if you legitimately look at the way that Luke dressed in the first trilogy, right? Like, if there was some gay influence, it was definitely in Jedi because he looks sharp from start to finish. The rest of the time, he looks like who knows what he's wearing, but he looks sharp in Jedi. So yeah,
the previous two movies, he just looks like a blue collar worker, like either
right?
operating farm equipment, or like he looks like an engineer. In the second movie, like getting your hands dirty.
Yeah, and then he walks in his, in his sharp little, his Chanel boots, and it's just like, okay, yes, sir.
That's exactly what Chase called it, with Chanel boots.
Yeah. If you type Chanel into my phone, it predictive texts boots because I've talked about it so much. Because, like, yeah.
I'm not mad at that fixation. I think
there are worse fixations.
Yeah, I think we all have like that little thing of just like, why do you focus so much on it? Like the outfits that I just can't stop staring at are like the weird gold intricate shit on Boston Nass's cloak. I just keep staring at it.
See, now, and the other thing that gets me is the yellow leather jacket at the end of New Hope that Mark Hamill's wearing. I'm like, I would wear that jacket today. I would wear that jacket. Bring it over here. I will put it on.
There's a reason why,
but I will try.
There's a reason why they keep using that outfit in the comics. Like, they know it looks cool.
Right? They know it looks good. They know. I mean, like, Han never changes. Why? Because it worked the first time. Don't ruin it. Just leave him the way he is. He looks great. Just Don't change it. He's beautiful. Just leave him how he is. And
It's
yeah,
the
it's
exact opposite philosophy of Padme.
right. Well, but that's the fun of the female characters, because generally in these kinds of movies, they're the only ones who change their clothes all the time. So that's where
Yeah.
the wardrobe department gets to go just ape. So they go, and they change her clothes every 3 seconds because they can.
I mean, she's not just regal, but she's also like very like liberated.
Mhm.
Like she's very not like loose in like the bad sense. She's not strict and stiff,
No.
so she's able to do all this expression.
Hmm.
Like they wouldn't do that for imperial female character, but someone
Right.
like Padme would make sense.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the reasons why she's such a loved character, because she's a queen in the sense that we would all want to be a queen, to be real and down to earth, and yet able to stand in that spot and do those things and wear those clothes and all that other stuff. But she's still not so uptight that she makes you nervous. And
Yes.
legitimately, neither was Leia. Leia was, I mean, she knew her stuff, and she was, when she needed to be. But when she didn't, she was just, you know, one of the boys. She wasn't super uptight. She really wasn't. She sometimes came across that way, but she wasn't super uptight. She was just efficient. That's it, efficient.
Like sometimes I use a weird idiom of like who's a nerd and who's in the trenches, and I'm
Mhm.
Leia is in the trenches. Leia is the
Absolutely
nerd.
in the trenches. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny when you go back and watch those movies now, some of those older movies. I know that I see some of the women and the way they're portrayed so much better than I did before. Like people ask all the time, did Leia influence you in your life? And I'm like, no, not at all.
Yeah.
Because in my house, there was a little tiny 5'3" woman with dark hair and pale skin and round cheeks who ruled like a general.
Yeah.
There was nothing. There was no messing around. You did what she said, and you did it, the way she said it, and with a smile. And if she said no, you forgot you wanted it. And it was
You
my
didn't need
mother.
Space Mom. You had Mom.
Yeah, I didn't need Space Mom because my mom is Princess Leia. Like, it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
So she wasn't new to me. I didn't have to learn to be strong from her. I already had. But it was nice to see someone like my mom represented, because back then, women were,
I would argue it's not the best now, but it was a desert. The further you go back.
yeah, it was, yeah, there were very few. And back then, sometimes I think we missed some of the really good ones. And just because we weren't paying attention, which is unfortunate, but that's why I, try to convince people to go back and look at some of those movies again. Like, go watch the first Terminator again, and watch Linda Hamilton. Don't tell me she's a damsel in distress. She has that down at the end.
And she's one of the examples that like people actually know of, like a strong female character back in the day. But a lot of
Yeah.
these, movie roles get overlooked because there's such a surplus of movies being released, and
True.
most of them aren't runaway successes, and only
Mhm.
a certain amount of them, depending on like what format they came out on, actually have like another life afterwards, like become like a cult following film.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's time to get to the Glup Shadow. So if you're not familiar, a Glup
Okay.
Shadow is a character in Star Wars that basically does nothing, just kind of there usually.
Mhm.
I would consider everything from a background extra to like Crix Nadine. That all that is prime Glup Shadow territory.
Okay.
Some characters I would argue grow out of being a Glup Shadow because
Mhm.
they get way more play. Like I would say back in the day, R5D4 was a Glup
Mhm.
Shadow. Now,
Mhm.
how much play he gets in like Mandoverse, he's not really a Glup Shadow anymore.
Right. Right.
So, it's kind of awkward. Like, we love the who the fuck cares about this character, but if you give them too much attention, they're mainstream.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think I got a good one for you.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the character of Treadwell?
No.
Okay. So before I show you the image of the character, Treadwell is technically the name of of their series.
Okay.
Just the nickname they've been stuck with.
Okay.
This is Treadwell. You get a good look at him.
Mm-hmm.
Does that character look familiar to you?
It's a little astromech droid?
Not an estimate. Like you see how?
Well, a droid of some sort.
Yeah. All you need to know about Astromech, if it looks anything like R2, it's probably Astromech.
Right.
Because not all of them are trash can shaped.
But isn't that a little guy that's on a ship?
Okay. And see,
At least
now we're
I'm
getting
just
some-
I'm just using my Sherlock Holmes here, and I'm kind of deductive reasoning. I'm like, isn't he
Okay.
on a ship though?
Treadwell was a WED 15 stepoid Treadwell droid
Okay.
who helped Han and Chewbacca
Yeah, fix it.
repair the Falcon at
Mhm.
Echo Base.
At least I knew who I was talking about. I did know that he was on the ship. I did know that that was the little guy. I feel good about that. Okay, go on.
They used to be owned by Jawas.
Wasn't everybody? Or was that just me? Okay, never mind.
Apparently, Jawas are the 1619 of the droids. And before that, they repaired Republic cruisers for the Clone Wars.
Ah, okay.
They were acquired by Han 3 years before the Battle of Hoth.
Okay.
They were first named in a certain point of view for Empire Strikes Back. Before the character didn't have a name, they went with a very simple name. Like, oh, the
Clearly.
droid type is the Treadwell. This character's name is Treadwell.
Nice.
But before I get to what happens to this character, I want to say they just look like, a sweet, dork. Like all of this type of droid, they have these weird, like square bifocals that look like, exaggerated nerdy glasses.
Right.
And I think you want to say, oh, he seems like a nice one.
He seems like he's in the Star Wars AV club.
He's just like, oh yeah, they're killing it at Dungeons and Dragons, killing it at the chess.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm. He brings his own dice, I can tell.
This droid has a pencil pocket protector.
Yeah, for sure. For
This is the
sure.
vibe this droid gives, and I feel bad for them because they don't make it. They don't. The skinny little friend who is just poking at electrical cords while Chewbacca wails, and Han's like, "Hey, buddy." They were destroyed by stormtroopers because they were attempting to inform Han that the Empire disabled the Falcon's hyperdrive.
Oh, makes sense. Makes sense.
And if you're wondering, well, like, okay, obviously they die in that movie. They die during this battle. Do we get to see any more of them? No.
Well, I mean, they wouldn't really fit into the category if you did. I mean,
You can write prequel material of dead characters,
that's
for
true.
days.
That's true. That's true.
Like they mention of
I bet you
working
there's
with
a
Republic
whole
cruisers.
passel of fanfic on it right somewhere. I know there is.
Well, as far as canon goes, canon is the only thing that has named this character because in Legends, this character doesn't have a name.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably still be Treadwell though. if you ask someone that was working on it, it's like, this is Treadwell. It's like naming Pokemon by this point.
Pretty much. But I mean, somewhere out there, I feel like somebody's got an entire file folder full of stories about the little Treadwell droid.
I think this is an occasion where I may not be the biggest fan of this character, period. There's some other characters that I feel that way. Like Warrior Junior from Solo, I'm like, no one gives a shit about the character. I probably by default care the most about the character. I can't even find the character in the fucking movie. But this one,
well, there's that.
but this one, cuteness factor, is a droid, and there's a lot of droid stands out there that obsess about every droid.
I feel like that's true though, because when you showed me the picture, I knew that was the little guy on the ship. I mean, I knew exactly where in the movie and which movie that little guy was from. I just didn't know anything more than that. But yeah, I mean, come on, that whole Hoth bit and see you in hell. Like, come on, that's like classic. Everything that goes on Hoth is classic.
Yeah, like I can't fault you for not knowing the name of this character because this character's only been named for 3 years.
I barely know the names of some of the other characters. Like if your name wasn't said out loud, there's a good chance I don't know it, and that's okay because I have trouble enough remembering my own name.
I'm antithetical to that because I had to do all this research for
of course.
Like I have hundreds of names prepared for future episodes. Hundreds. So I'm well ahead of the curve. All I need to do is just type in their name and just write a few notes, and then I got it.
See, you have all that, and I'm a talking head. I just kind of show up.
You're just like, sounds cool.
No, not really. I mean, I do say that, but it's not that I don't care. It's the simple fact that every single time I get introduced to a character I didn't know before, be it, because we see it in a thing or something like this, or somebody talks about it, I do think of somebody that I will probably never meet. That is their favorite character.
Yeah.
Their favorite character ever. And they've got a 300-year history on this character about everything they've done, everyone they've ever come into contact with. And what I think to myself is somebody out there feels about this character the way I feel about Luke Skywalker. They could talk for days about this character and everything that they know. And that just makes my little heart happy because I love the idea that, even the smallest little thing is something that someone cares about. And maybe it's the grandson of the guy who designed it, but that's not the point. The point is that every one of these characters matters. So even if I won't remember much about Treadwell, I will remember Treadwell. If you ask me 3 years from now, I'll be like, yeah, that's Treadwell.
If this droid had survived, I feel like Treadwell could become good friends with Dio.
But Dio has got a waiting list a mile long. People want to be friends because I want to be friends with Dio. So, oh my God, so cute. Sorry. That little droid. I mean, man, Star Wars knows how to do droids. They're all so darn cute.
Dio is just a sad little shelter puppy.
Yeah, but that's part of the.
That's part of the charm.
The want to be kind, the want to give love and kindness and decency where it wasn't before. It's one of the great endearing qualities of Rey. Her immediate kindness and givingness and lovingness to pretty much everybody she comes into contact with, or at least affability, if nothing else. It's that moment for her just shows a depth of character, which is not unexplained, but it's, I don't know. I think it's one of those moments, but I think that's just Daisy Ridley's awesome. Like, I mean, you could tell her she's a paper bag in this scene and she'd still be Daisy Ridley. So
Her acting half asleep is better than a lot of people in the industry.
yeah,
She-
yeah,
she's just
yeah,
really talented.
yeah. And I mean, that isn't always the way it is. So yeah, I think very, very highly of her and of Adam Driver for that matter. I mean, the world is better for them being in front of a camera. But yeah, Dio was just, yeah, that was one of those ones that hit me right in my little heart. Like, oh my god, cutie. Yeah.
I would like to thank you for being on my channel, like taking time out of your day and talking nerd crap.
Happy to do it.
Always appreciate it from guests. You can periodically find Rayven appearances, on Boaxium stream. You can obviously find me here. I give you a list of all my appearances, but you don't click on it. On my other channels, like I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about
No.
general fans. I frequent SSW Network. I'm Kyle Ripken of appearances on that channel. I've been on
Yes, you are.
Bombadcast, where I, give everyone rap names.
Yes.
Oh, you saw that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I try to haunt the chat when I can.
Haunt. That's an entertaining word to use. I'm gonna let you go. I hope you have a great day, great week, whatever.
Sounds good.
I thank everyone for watching and hearing about fallen homie Treadwell.
Rip
R.I.P.
Treadwell.